Hi, welcome to my blog. My name is Tom Shue, and today we're going to do what is called a rep card. I just did a Google search and I found this Flickr page, and it's Heather K from Infinity Photography, and she has some samples of rep cards. Just so you can see what they are, I'm going to skim through a few. They're like a business card, and people use them for senior gifts. I think they're neat looking for business cards. They might be a little thin or whatever, but there's some neat stuff on here, and I'm not trying to promote her wedding business. I'm just showing you this rep card. So I did some work online, and I found a template from a company that I'm planning on ordering some rep cards from. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a few things. One, we're going to design a rep card, a quick one. And secondly, I'm going to show you how to create a pattern and define it much like a brush pattern that we've been working with, but this is a pattern inside of a fill. It's something that will mask itself. And this is a Damask style of pattern, and you can see it comes in many shapes. And the whole idea is to get a section of it. Do you see how this is cut out? So that whenever it tiles or lays next to itself, it will build a seamless pattern. Okay, so you'll have to play with it. But once you find a pattern that is free, royalty free, you don't want to just grab somebody's stuff and start using it, because copyright is pretty important. And since I'm teaching for not for profit, it's okay for me to show these things in my video because I'm not infringing copyright. It's called fair use. So I'm not going to be using someone else's work. I always create my own work. There's patterns that you can buy for rep cards. For example, here's some. I believe they're from Impix maybe, but these are Couture collection, and you can see they've got some shapes and they got some argyle patterns going on, and this one here's got some tape on a little frame. And there's that damask pattern, okay, and there's two sides. And the way the ones work from the company I'm going to is you can have one side like this that has just standard information on it, and the other side you can have 100 different images, okay, and they will just randomly print of those 100 images on your cards, so they're not all the same. So you can do 100 fronts. So you can make 100 different templates. Like this could be a one front, that could be one front, that could be one front, this could be one front, that could be one front, and your back could look like this on all of them, okay. So people are selling these templates for around $50 that I've saw for like a couture collection um, on one of these sites. So this is just a standard one with rounded corners, but they got some with these they call it ornate edges. Okay, so I'm not going to be doing anything with ornate edges right now. We're just going to do the standard rectangular one. So I'm going to go right into Photoshop, and you can see here that I have some damask patterns. Okay, and how a pattern works is this, and I'm just going to show you this so you understand what's going to happen here. Is I'm just going to grab my marquee rectangular selection tool. Okay, let me zoom in a little bit so we can just grab just the pattern. And say if we wanted to grab, oh, it doesn't really matter. Let's say we'll just grab this one here. I'll make the selection, and you want to be right on your selection. Okay, you don't want any extra border around it. Okay, so once you make your selection, you're going to go to edit. Remember how we did define brush preset? This time we're going to say define pattern. Okay, and we'll just call this DEMASK sample. All right. So now let's create a new layer. Let's hide this one. And wherever we could fill this whole thing if we just select it. Just select it all and do edit, fill. And it's going to ask us what do we want to do. We want to do a pattern. Okay, you can do like a content aware fill or anything, but we're going to pattern, and we're going to grab a pattern. See that I've got lots of them. And let's get that one we just created, which is right here. Okay, we click OK. And you see it fills it all in as a seamless pattern. Kind of neat, huh? Let me show you what else you could do. Control D to deselect. Say, for example, we grab the circle or the elliptical marquee tool, and we wanted to create a pattern here. Okay, this is kind of an idea. This will show you what you can do here with these things. So we move this over a little bit to the center, kind of center this up. Okay, and if we try to fill this now, it's going to fill the inside of this circle. I'm looking at this kind of like the oval for a picture frame to come through, maybe a mask layer. But we want it to fill the outside edge, so we need to invert this selection. So if you hit Control-Shift-I or Command-Shift-I on a Mac, okay, now we're going to be filling inside the two layers of marching ants, and watch what happens. Edit, fill with the pattern, and there we go. Check that out. Control-D, select. We've just made a neat pattern. Okay, so we could create a new layer, okay, and we could say maybe fill it with this purple color. Click OK. Let's do a paint bucket tool. Let's drag this right below there, and then we can make this layer an overlay. So we've got that pattern there, and then let's come over here with let's create another layer. Okay, let's just make it a white layer, and let's hit D for default. Just X over and flip our color chips by hitting the X key with this selected, and let's fill it with white. Okay, and now let's put a mask on it. If we hold down the Alt key, and the Alt key is the Option key on the Mac, will hide that. And now what we want to do is we want to paint that white in, just in this area here. So we can grab our rectangle selection tool, and we can make our own new window, however we want it to look. That's a pretty good grab. And let's fill that with white paint, okay, because we're going to be revealing this mask. So we're going to grab our paint bucket tool with white inside that selection, Control D. Now we have a picture frame. Pretty simple, huh? Well, there's lots of things you can do with shapes and patterns, and we just don't have to use the marquee tools. So say, here's a template. Now we won't do the whole thing. I'll just show you how I plan on doing this. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate this guy, and let's see here, image, rotation, because I'm going to do a vertical one, and I want to do it 90 degrees counterclockwise. Okay, so let's zoom this out, and if we look at this closely, it just gives you some information that this is the bleed. It wants you to fill the background all the way to the bleed because they're going to chop it off, and it's going to be chopped off at this red line. That's the trim line, and the green area is the area in which that we want to keep any important stuff that we want seen. So if we have part of the image, we don't want to go past the green line. And so there we go. So the bleed means they want us to overlap this red line just so they can trim it off. Fill the whole gray area. So just consider that when you're making it. And then you hide this when you want to get rid of it. So you delete that when you're submitting your first image. And then the next thing you want to understand is you have a front side and a back side. So it's telling you the orientation. So on your front side, you want to make sure that your images are faced vertically like this. And then when you do your back side, you know, rotate this 180 degrees, like image, rotation, 180 degrees, just so you're working with the upside. Because when they flip the card over from front to back, they want the images to be the same. You know, they don't want them to be wrong. So they give you this as a guide. So we'll go image, rotation, 180 again. Okay, so because I'm going to work with the front side first. The back side's going to stay constant. All right. So we get rid of the back. And we don't need the front because I know this is the upside. Okay, so I already know that. So what I want to do is I want to create a pattern. I'm going to show you what kind of pattern I'm going to create. I'm going to create a new layer just to give you an idea with the paintbrush tool what we're going to do. So I'm just going to grab, oh, it doesn't matter what brush. We're going to grab this brush tool. Let's size it down. We're going to paint with black. My idea is to grab the brush tool again, is to have like a curved kind of deal like this, maybe more like this, and then the same thing at the top, a curve like that, something to this effect. And I'll fill this bottom half with a cool pattern, you know, one of those damask patterns or something like this, and the same thing on the top, or I could use some stripes or some lines, some type of pattern. I'll fill the top and bottom, and then I will have my image, you know, somewhere around here where the person, you know, their hair and their face, their eyes. I'm a great artist, huh? There's the nose and the mouth, whatever. Picasso. Okay, so this is the vision. I know it's rough, but that's the vision, and now let's make it. So let's control this, delete that whole layer. So first thing I'll do is I'll start with some rulers, okay? I want to know that right here at the edge is 0 here and here. So if you come over here in the corner and you grab the ruler tool, we can set a new 0, okay? So wherever we have this, it's going to be 0 on that edge and 0 on the top edge of just that bleed area. Back off it just a little bit. Show the red. Show the red. Okay, so now our 0 is here and here, and you can see this edge is when I'm on the top, I'm right on 0, and I'm right on the side, I'm on 0. So that's going to make it easy. If you just come over to the side here, you can drag out some guidelines. So let's just drag out some guidelines. So I want right on that bleed line, and I want one on the other side on the bleed line. Okay, now we've got, what is this? It's showing us 1, and that's a quarter plus an eighth. So it's like 1 3/8 wide, roughly. Now this doesn't have to be perfect. This is artwork. We're not, you know, building a machine shop tool or something like that. So it's 1 3/8. So that's a half plus 3/16. Okay, so this is a half, and then we go 1, 2, 3/16 right there. That's the center. All right. Now I'm going to make another guide to the side. This will be kind of the middle point of where I want that curve to be. You know, that wavy line at the bottom, and up here, this one will be kind of the baseline for the curve at the top. So this will be my window for my image, and this will be the guides for my curves. Now I got to remember that I'm going to be putting stuff over to the side, right on this edge. And I just want to make sure that I've got enough over that bleed. Okay? So what I'm going to do is, just so you can get an idea how I'm going to do this, I'm going to grab the pen tool and say if I select, let me zoom in here, right at the bottom with this pen tool. If I put a dot right here, it's going to make my first point, and I click here again, okay? If you hold down the shift key, it will make a straight line. Okay, now I'm going to come to the center point right here, and I'm going to click. And it's going to let me draw out a curve like a handle. So there's my first curve, okay? And it's close enough for government work as far as I'm concerned. The radius is roughly, the height of it's in the center between here and here. Now I'm going to come over here to this next point, same on the other side, and I'm going to click here. And it's going to make a reverse of that curve. Okay? And then if you alt click right on this edge, if you try to click here, it's going to give you a crooked line. Sometimes it'll be another curve, just like this was a curve. But if you alt click right here on this edge, you get that triangle. That's an anchor point. That little greater than sign, it just turned that point into an anchor point. So if I hold my shift key down and I click, it's going to draw a straight line. So here I go. I'm going to come down here holding the shift key, and I'm going to click here, and I'm going to click here, and I'm going to click here. You see the circle? I just closed that pen path, and I want to turn it into a selection. Okay? 4 pixels radius, that's fine. But I'm going to make selection, and now I've got marching ants. Now what do you think I'm going to do? I'm going to put in a pattern. I'm going to put in maybe the lines or something like this. So we're going to do edit, and I'm going to do, we're going to have to go to a new layer. This layer is not selectable. So we're going to create a new layer here. And we're going to go edit fill, and we're going to go to pattern. And this time I'm going to load up a pattern. So we're going to load patterns. And let me try this one here. And maybe we'll want to do one of those argyles or something like that. You know, this is where your creative juices have to flow. So maybe let's just select this one for the first one. So click OK, and now it filled that whole area with that argyle pattern. So we can do the same thing at the top. Okay, we're going to grab our pen tool, and we're on that same layer. So we grab our pen tool, and we start over here. We're going to click here. We're going to come to this edge, and I'm going to click again. I'm going to hold my shift key and click. And now I'm going to come to the center, and I want to look at this again. I want to see what I'm doing here, because I want this to kind of mirror the bottom. So I want to make sure that my arch is going in. Okay, so I want to just roughly center it in between this gap area. I want the peak of the arch to be between the two lines. And now when I come over and click on that same line on the opposite side, it'll give me a reverse of that. So I click there. Oop. So I need to click here. Let me back up. It's trying to say this is the last anchor point. So I need a Control Z to back off. So let's select this one, click it here. And sometimes, you know, you have to just deal with it. When you're dealing with a small area, you have to define each point, because it doesn't know. So we're going to make our art. And then I'm going to come over here, and there we go. So I'm going to hold down the Alt key, see, make that an anchor point, and then I'm going to come straight out to the edge with the Shift key, click, Shift key holding it, click, click. Oh, I didn't get it high enough. And since it's on the bleed, it really doesn't matter. Click. So now we're going to go ahead and make that a selection, except this time I'm not going to use 4 pixels. I'm just going to use maybe 1 or 2 pixels of feathering. And that feathering is that radius here. You see that radius? And it kind of smooths it up a little bit so it's not such a straight line. So we're going to do edit, fill, pattern. And now we have our top pattern. Okay, so now we're going to make another new layer. Okay. In this layer, I'm going to make a border piece. Okay, so I'm going to use that same technique with the pen tool, except it's going to make a parallel shape right next to it. Okay, so I'm going to hit Control D to deselect. Okay, and with our pen tool selected, let's see, grab our pen tool here, and I'm going to zoom in, and I'll start right on the bottom one. And I won't can do any more after this. I'll just make this piece, do my effects on it, and then I'll drop an image in, and we'll call this tutorial done, because you'll have a pretty good idea what you need to do to finish one. So with our pen tool selected, we're going to grab a point here, we're going to make a selection there, and we're going to go right to the center here, make another selection. Kind of just, let me just back off this and just use our guides. So let's just drop another guide in. Okay, so this is just going to give me a reference for how thick I want my little thing to be. Okay, so there we go. So let's get started here. We'll click here, and I'm going to shift click there, and then I'm going to go right to the center again, and I'm going to click up like this. Okay, so that's roughly, I just want to make sure I'm covering the argyle pattern, and then I'm going to click here, and then I'm going to click here with the shift key. I'm going to click there with the shift key. I'm going to click here with the shift key. And then I'm going to go right here to the center point. And I'm going to make a parallel arc. The same thickness. Alrighty. And then I'm going to come over here to this point. Okay. And I'm going to click. And I'm going to adjust this arc. And this is where you'll have to learn that Alt key, because if we tried to click over here, we'll never get a straight line. So you have to hold down the Alt key, and it gives us that anchor point. We click there, and now we can just come straight over to this edge. With the shift key, we're going to click, and then I'm going to close it, click. Now we have this unique selection here, okay? And we're going to fill this with the color, but first we're going to make it a selection, and I'm just going to do 1 pixel radius. Click OK. Actually, Control Z that. I'm going to do no radius. Make it a selection and 0 pixels. Okay, and I want to fill this with a color, and the color is going to be one of these colors that we'll choose. We could go with the green or the purple. So which would probably be? The dark purple probably be the best. So if you just click there and sample the color, you click OK. Now we grab our paint bucket tool and we'll fill this in. Woo! We need to flip our colors X, and whoa! It's giving us all kinds of problems. Let's back out of this. Okay. With this layer selected and purple on top, let's just fill that line with purple. Okay. We'll Control D to deselect it, and now we'll add our effects to it. So if we double click this, we can double click that layer. It'll bring up your layer styles, and we're going to put a stroke on it. So we'll come down here to stroke, okay, and obviously it's way too wide. Let me pull it over so we can see here. So you have to click on stroke, and we don't need it to be 17. And I've made it a starburst shape on a gradient. Okay, if I just did color, it's just going to give me a line. Okay, and then I can choose whether it's on the outside, the inside, or the center of that line. Okay, so I want it on the outside, and I want the fill type to be a gradient. All right, and you can define the style of the gradient that you want it to be, whether it's like a radial, and this means that it's a gradient from left to right, and this one here is reflected, and this one here is a diamond pattern. And if you did this on like a circle, you'd see better what it was, like a circle shape instead of this random shape. But I'm going with the starburst because it gives me that double inside. Okay, and then you can just decide what kind of gradient you want. And this one here, I just have a black to white gradient going on. Okay, and then we can determine how big it is by here. So I'm thinking somewhere around maybe 3. So click OK, and I want to go back to my blending options. I click on the FX, and I'm going to put a drop shadow in. So we'll click drop shadow. So you have to select it when you click, even though the box is selected, unless you click on it, you're not selected. And let's make it the size here, and the distance here. And you can come into the interface and pull it and move it around where you want, okay? So don't worry about having to use these controls because they're kind of wonky sometimes. So I want to make it look three-dimensional a little bit there. So we're going to click OK. And then I can take that same layer that I just created and I'm going to duplicate it. How do we do that? Control or Command J. Okay. So I can do that and make it darker. Or in this case, we're going to slide it right up to the top. And hopefully, if we were good, we got it really close to what we were working with in the first place. So let's zoom out so we can see what's going on. Okay, let's grab this. I'm going to hold the shift key and just drag it straight up. And we'll see if we got close. And looky there. Gosh, looks like an Easter egg. Alright, so let me zoom this out. And so I had an image that I put on here as a smart object. And the reason why I used an image as a smart object was so that I could resize it smaller or bigger depending on what I needed to fit, and it wouldn't lose resolution. If you try to resize images up and down to fit them with hitting the Control T, the free transform, we need to be on the right layer. So we're going to deselect there, hit enter, and we're going to go down to our image. So if you open it as a smart object from Lightroom in Photoshop and copy it in to your document, you're good to go. So if you hit Control T, now we can free transform. I need to zoom out a little bit here, zoom, because I'm working with this small space for the video screen capture. Normally my Photoshop will be really big, so we're going to hit Control T again to free transform. And now if I did this to make the image fit on my screen, and I go, okay, I like that. Wait a minute, no, I don't like that. And I hit Control T, and I wanted it to be bigger, like I wanted her face to be like this, and I hit enter. I would be all stair-step and rasterized because Photoshop would take and downsample the image when I made it small the first time I free transformed. But when you're working with a smart object, it won't do that. Okay, it will allow you to retransform small, big, whatever, rotate the image however you want it to fit, and you can work with it. So let's do that again. Control T to transform. Let's make it a little smaller so we can fit her in there and get some more detail of what's happening. Alright. And thinking about composition a little bit, maybe I want her eye to be over there or eye to be back here. So obviously I can't get the eye over there, but if I hold shift I can move this over and keep her eye kind of over maybe at the rule of thirds. I know composition isn't something you always think of when you're building a card, but I'm kind of thinking of that when I'm doing this. Alright, so let's clear these guides. So you can do view and clear the guides. And there you have, you know, maybe a rough sample of a card. Maybe we need to come down here and put another border in. Maybe we need to do a complete border around it. Maybe we need to change the colors. Say if I wanted to change the colors of this guy here, I could change it. We can do like this. Let's just go into this and let's do a color overlay. So we click color overlay, and maybe we don't want a color overlay. Maybe we want a gradient overlay. Let's get into this gradient overlay, and there's some options here. We could change these colors and make it, maybe we don't want it to be so obtrusive. And you can just sample through these overlays, and you can change the scales too, and you can come up with, you know, different ones that it may or may not work for you, but or you can create your own. So let's try something like this one. That's kind of neat looking. Blue steel. And you just up and down arrow and go through them and see if something you like is there. I'm kind of liking that blue steel. Okay, and then we can change the blend mode. Say if we want it to be an overlay, or if we want it to be a difference, we can go through this too and see what kind of effect. That's really vibrant colors. But instead of just being a solid pattern, you know, it gives you different options and different looks with the same material that we're working with. So we'll just leave it like that just for tutorial's sake. So I want to thank you all for taking time to visit my blog today. And until next time, we'll see you soon.